Hi, I'm Kent. I think I'm going to have some more room in my next glaze firing, so I'm going to try and reglaze some pots that didn't turn out well before. So here are a handful of pots that all had previous problems. This one had some pinholing going on. This one crawled towards the bottom. This one had this weird funky effect. This was the bottom of a glaze container and I had some chunky bits and I don't think it worked out well. And then for this one, the two glazes just didn't really play well together. So I've got a glaze here. This is just a base glaze that has a little bit of titanium in it, so I'm going to use this to try and cover the pots. From what I understand, the real trick is getting the glaze to stick to the already glazed pots. I'm going to transfer my glaze here to the container since I don't have enough to dunk any of the pots. So I'm just going to pour the glaze on the outside and see what happens. All right, that worked surprisingly well. So I'm going to I'll set this aside and let it dry and probably do a second coat. All right, I'll do the same thing to the other pots. This last one really only has problems in the bottom, so I'm just going to dunk it in the bottom inch or so. I'm going to let those all dry. I think I'm going to do a second coat as well, and then I'll put them into the glaze firing. The pots are out of the glaze firing, and it kind of sort of worked. Here's the first pot. The clear glaze went on just fine. You can see it down on the bottom where it covered up some of the spots that were unglazed before. It didn't really do anything to the surface in terms of fixing these brown spotches. I think the biggest thing this one did was cover up some of the unglazed spots that were not there before. There were some holes where the green glaze crawled a little bit and some spots I missed at the bottom. So now it's fully glazed. I'm still not sure about the overall design and pattern of this one, but I think it's at least a small improvement. This one here had some rough spots. It was more like ceramic than glaze, and the clear seemed to have fixed that. There may be a few little rough spots kind of poking through, but at least the overall surface is covered now. I think that's a little bit of an improvement. Next up is this one. So the big problem here was that there was some crawling down at the bottom. The clear glaze I applied definitely filled that in, so it's not rock clay anymore. However, you can still notice that there was crawling there originally. So if I were to really fix that, I'd probably need to put on the same glaze I used the first time, so a black glaze. The other thing you can notice is these big drips. Luckily, I raised this one off of the kiln shelf. Otherwise, it would have glazed itself right to the kiln shelf and left a big mess. I got some of these little drippies here, and hiding off to the side here is actually a piece of glaze that fell all the way onto the shelf. I had a couple of these, but luckily they didn't adhere too much. So this is what the bottom looks like. So here's the one that actually stuck to the shelf. These couple here missed, and there's some glaze here past the edge of the bottom. So this one is a little bit wobbly. The other thing that happened is in the glaze fire, the green glaze at the top actually got some pinholes in it. So again, a marginal success. I think it solved some of the problems, but it didn't wind up with a pot that is significantly better. And the last one is this one here. So this one had tons of little pinholes in the surface, and from the video you can still see these spots here, but before they were rough and now they're smooth. So the clear glaze actually did their thing here. It actually smoothed it all back out. However, there's a problem with this pot that I created. So just like the black pot, I was worried that it might weld itself to the kiln shelf, so I put it up on some wadding. Unfortunately, I forgot that the bottom of the pot was also glazed. So my wadding actually glazed itself to the pot. Usually I don't glaze the bottom of my pot, so when I was loading the kiln, I didn't even think about it. So a lesson for next time. That was my first attempt reglazing pots. I was able to fix some of the defects, but wind up with some side effects as well. I just used clear glaze this time, so it was really just filling in the surface of these pots. If I used a colored glaze, maybe it would cover up some of the other defects that were there. It wasn't that hard to apply, although it came off very easily, so I'd be very careful when it was wet. Even when it was dry, it came off pretty easily. A sponge would wipe it right off of the glazed surface. So getting the application just right on reglazing the pots was a little bit tricky. However, it was also relatively low cost in terms of time and effort. So if I have a pot that fails in the future, it's one of the tricks I can try again. Put a little bit more glaze on it, put it back in, see if it gets better. If not, no big deal. And while these pots aren't my favorite, maybe someone else will like them. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about refiring pots, let me know. Thanks.